Welcome to the History Story Podcast. Buckle up, because we're about to embark on a wild, historic road trip. A journey into one of history's most unsettling and bizarre tales, straight from history books and uncovered sources. Forget those predictable narratives, the ones that stick to the well-trodden paths. We're venturing off the map here. This is where truth gets stranger than fiction.
You got that right.
And today, we're diving headfirst into a story that you, our amazing listeners, have been buzzing about: the 1884 shipwreck of the Mignonette and the truly haunting echoes it shares with Edgar Allan Poe's only novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket.
Yeah, it's a story that's captivated people for well over a century now, hasn't it?
It really has, and for good reason. You see, in Poe's novel, he spins this tale of a shipwrecked crew so desperate they resort to drawing lots to decide who gets sacrificed so the others can survive. And guess who the unlucky soul is?
Yeah, you can tell us.
A cabin boy by the name of Richard Parker. And he's, well, killed and eaten.
Grim stuff. But here's the thing, right? 46 years after Poe publishes this dark tale, life throws a curveball. And it's a curveball that lands squarely in the uncanny valley. I mean, it's like fiction reached out and touched reality in the most disturbing way imaginable.
It's a real head-scratcher, isn't it?
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into the spooky stuff, let's set the stage for this real-life drama. Picture it. May 19th, 1884, Southampton, England. A crisp spring day. The yacht Mignonette, a fairly modest vessel, is all set to embark on a grand adventure, bound for Sydney, Australia. And on board, we have our four protagonists.
Four souls setting sail, none the wiser to the harrowing fate that awaited them.
Exactly. First up, we've got Captain Tom Dudley. Our sources paint him as a man of faith, a capable seaman, the kind of leader you'd want at the helm when things get rough. Then there's his right-hand man, Edwin Stevens, the mate. Edmund Brooks, a seasoned sailor, brings his practical experience to the mix. And last but not least, there's young Richard Parker, a 17-year-old orphan. From what we can gather, he was pretty green, lacking the hard-won wisdom of the sea.
Yeah, and that inexperience, sadly, plays a crucial role in what unfolds.
Absolutely. Now, their voyage starts smoothly enough. Weeks pass by without a hitch. But then, on July 5th, their luck runs out. They're smack dab in the middle of the South Atlantic, about 1,600 miles northwest of the Cape of Good Hope, and bam, disaster strikes. A sudden, ferocious storm slams into the Mignonette.
It's the kind of storm that comes out of nowhere, right? Catches you completely off guard. And in this case, it's more than just a storm. It's a death sentence for the Mignonette.
It really is. The yacht starts going down fast. It's a frantic scramble for survival as the sea swallows their vessel whole. They manage to escape into a tiny 13-foot dinghy. It's all that stands between them and the unforgiving ocean. But here's the kicker. Their supplies are beyond meager. 2 tins of turnips. No fresh water. Can you even fathom that?
I mean, just thinking about the sheer terror of that moment is, well, it's almost unbearable. You're adrift, completely at the mercy of the elements, with practically nothing to sustain you. It's the kind of scenario that pushes human resilience to the absolute breaking point.
And that's exactly what happens. Days bleed into weeks, and their hope begins to dwindle. Those 2 tins of turnips vanish in a flash. Thankfully, they do manage to snag a turtle, which provides some much-needed sustenance. They even drink its blood.
Yeah, desperate times call for desperate measures, right? But even with that, it's hardly a feast. You can't survive on a turtle forever.
Nope. And it's at this point that young Richard Parker makes a fatal mistake. He drinks seawater.
Oh, no.
Yeah, against the advice of the older, more experienced sailors. We all know now that drinking seawater just makes dehydration worse, messes up your body's systems. And for poor Richard, it's a recipe for disaster. He falls terribly ill, delirious, basically on death's door. It's just heartbreaking.
Absolutely. And as if things weren't grim enough, the situation takes an even darker turn.
Yeah. This is where the story goes from tragic to downright horrifying. They've been adrift for 20 days. Starvation and dehydration are gnawing at them. And young Parker is fading fast.
So what do?
Well, Captain Dudley, driven to the edge by desperation, proposes something unthinkable. He suggests that they kill the dying boy, Richard Parker, and consume his body to survive. I mean, can you imagine the weight of that decision?
It's a truly chilling proposition, a glimpse into the darkest recesses of human nature when pushed to the brink of survival, and it's a decision that will forever stain their souls, regardless of the circumstances.
Absolutely. And tragically, Stevens agrees. Brooks, however, claims he initially objected, but he participates later. Dudley, according to accounts, actually says a prayer before taking Parker's life with his penknife. It's a jarring contrast, isn't it?
Oh, it's deeply unsettling, a moment of both religious observance and utter despair, and it underscores just how complex and contradictory human behavior can be, especially in extreme situations.
For the next 4 days, they survive on the young cabin boy's body. It's a grim testament to the lengths people will go to when faced with death. Then, on July 29th, a glimmer of hope. A German sailing ship, the Moctezuma, spots their little dinghy. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated relief.
Talk about a lifeline. I can't even imagine what that must have felt like to be plucked from the jaws of death after such a harrowing ordeal. But their rescue is just the beginning of another chapter, one fraught with legal and moral complexities.
Right, so they're rescued. They make it back to Falmouth, England. And Dudley, thinking he'd acted according to some unwritten brutal custom of the sea, openly confesses everything. He probably thought he'd be met with understanding, maybe even some grudging respect for doing what he thought he had to do.
But reality hits him hard, doesn't it?
Big time. The authorities are appalled. He's arrested, along with Stevens, and they're charged with murder. I mean, think about it. Victorian England, 1884. It was a society steeped in strict morals and a firm belief in the rule of law. Cannibalism, even the most dire circumstances, was a huge taboo.
Yeah, they crossed the line, and now they're going to face the full weight of the legal system.
Exactly. And here's where things get really weird. Buckle up for this one. It turns out that 46 years before this real-life tragedy, Edgar Allan Poe had written a story, a fictional account of shipwrecked sailors resorting to cannibalism to survive.
And the name of the boy they kill and eat.
Richard Parker.
Yeah.
The exact same name. I mean, what are the odds? It's enough to make your head spin.
It's a coincidence of such startling proportions that it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. It makes you wonder about fate, about the power of stories, about whether some things are just meant to be. It's a real rabbit hole, this one.
No kidding. But before we go tumbling down that rabbit hole, let's talk about the context. Why did this case cause such a stir back then, and why does it still have this grip on us today?
Well, Victorian England in 1884 was an interesting place. On the one hand, you had this strict moral code, the sense of order and progress, fueled by scientific advancements. But on the other hand, sea travel was a huge thing, and with it came these frequent, often devastating shipwrecks. Stories of survival, both miraculous and horrific, captured the public's imagination.
Yeah, they were fascinated and horrified in equal measure.
Right.
And while whispers of this custom of the sea, drawing lots in extreme situations, might have circulated, cannibalism was something else entirely. It was a line you just didn't cross.
Right. So when the details of the Mignonette case come out, it's like a bomb going off. The newspapers are having a field day, of course. And public opinion, it's completely divided. Some, particularly those familiar with the harsh realities of the sea, could maybe, just maybe, understand the logic, the terrible, terrible logic of what they did. Sacrificing one life, however horrific, to save 3 others.
But there's this huge chunk of the public that's just repulsed. They see it as straight-up murder, the cold-blooded killing of a helpless young orphan. And the fact that they didn't even draw lots, Dudley claimed Parker was already dying, so it didn't matter, just makes it worse. It throws this whole custom of the sea defense out the window.
It's a mess, ethically and legally. And that leads us to the trial of R.V. Dudley and Stevens, a landmark case in English law. The authorities, they want to make it crystal clear that necessity, no matter how dire, is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for murder. The judges are under immense pressure. The whole world's watching.
It's a case that goes to the very heart of what's permissible, of where we draw the line between survival and transgression. And the court's decision sends shockwaves through the legal system. They find Dudley and Stevens guilty of murder, and they sentence them to death. It sets a precedent in common law countries that resonates to this day.
But the story doesn't end there. The public, they're outraged, not by the verdict, but by the sentence. A wave of sympathy for the sailors sweeps the nation. Sure, what they did was awful, but they were desperate. They were starving. They were facing their own deaths.
Yeah, the court of public opinion was weighing in, and it was swaying things. And this public outcry, well, it has a real impact. The Home Secretary steps in and recommends clemency.
A wise move, considering the mood of the nation.
And in the end, Queen Victoria herself commutes their sentences. Instead of death, they get 6 months in prison. As for Brooks, the guy who didn't actually kill Parker, he gets off scot-free.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting? There was no real cover-up. Dudley was pretty upfront about what happened right from the start.
Yeah, that honesty probably worked in their favor in the long run, even if it landed them in hot water initially.
It definitely added a layer of complexity to the whole thing. But let's circle back to the elephant in the room, shall we?
Hmm.
The name Richard Parker. It's just too weird to ignore. How do we even begin to make sense of it?
Well, the simplest explanation, the one most historians favor, is the mind-blowing coincidence theory. It's basically saying, yeah, it's freaky, but stuff happens. Richard Parker wasn't the most common name, but it wasn't unheard of either. Poe probably just plucked it out of thin air, or maybe there was some obscure news story that he subconsciously drew from. We'll probably never know.
And then, decades later, bam, another Richard Parker finds himself in a chillingly similar predicament. It's statistically improbable, for sure, but not impossible. After all, weird stuff happens all the time, and our brains, they're wired to see patterns even where there are none. So we latch onto this coincidence because it's just so damn eerie.
Exactly. And as much as we love a good dose of logic, sometimes it's just not enough, is it? That's where these other, more speculative theories come in, like synchronicity, Carl Jung's brainchild. This one says that some coincidences aren't just random flukes, they're meaningful, connected in ways we can't fully grasp. It's like there's this hidden tapestry, and every now and then we glimpse these threads that seem to tie everything together.
It's a trippy concept for sure, and it resonates with folks who've had their own share of meaningful coincidences, but scientifically it's hard to prove, right?
Totally. It's more of a philosophical approach, a way of seeing the world as interconnected in ways we can't always explain. Then, of course, we have the Poe as prophet subconscious tapestry theory. This one's a bit more out there. It suggests that maybe Poe, with his incredible imagination, somehow tapped into a collective unconscious, or even glimpsed a future event. It's like his art became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's like he wrote it into existence.
A pretty mind-blowing thought. But let's be real, there's no evidence that Poe could actually see the future. It's a fun theory, but it's more about the power of imagination than anything else.
Then we have the forgotten influence theory, which is a little more grounded, even if it's still pretty speculative. Maybe, just maybe, someone on the Mignonette had read Poe's novel, or at least heard the story. It's not like Pym was his most famous work, but it was out there.
So the idea is that the name Richard Parker was tucked away in their subconscious. And then, in their desperation, in that delirious state, it resurfaced. It's a long shot, but it adds a layer of psychological intrigue to the whole thing.
Of course, Dudley's stated reason for doing what he did was purely about survival. He was convinced Parker was going to die anyway, and that his death could save the others. So it's hard to say for sure if Poe's story played any role, conscious or unconscious.
Right. We're delving into the realm of speculation here. But it's precisely those unanswered questions, those lingering mysteries, that keep the Mignonette story alive in our collective consciousness. And it's not just about the Richard Parker connection either. The case has had a ripple effect across literature, film, and even legal and ethical debates.
Yeah, this one incident has had some serious legs. R.V. Dudley and Stevens remains a cornerstone case when it comes to the limits of necessity as a legal defense. But it's also sparked countless discussions about survival ethics, about the value of life in extreme circumstances, about the choices we make when faced with the unthinkable.
Exactly. And its echoes can be found in works of fiction, too. I mean, you can't talk about the Mignonette without mentioning Jan Martel's Life of Pi.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right, the tiger in the lifeboat. What's his name?
Richard Parker.
Bingo. Martel himself has said it was a direct homage to both the real and the fictional Richard Parkers. And what's even weirder is that the tiger's name in the book, apparently it was a clerical error on some hunting report. It's like another one of those crazy coincidences that makes you wonder if there's some unseen force at play.
It really is, and there have been documentaries about the Mignonette, historical dramas, you name it. It's a story that just won't go away.
And then there are all these little details that add even more layers to the story, like Richard Parker being just 17, an orphan. It makes the whole thing seem even more tragic, even more predatory. And then there's Dudley, a deeply religious man saying a prayer before killing Parker. It's just jarring.
Yeah, talk about a moral conundrum.
And don't forget about Brooks, the guy who claimed he never consented to the killing, even though he participated in the cannibalism. It was probably that distinction that kept him out of prison. Another crucial point is that lots weren't actually drawn, unlike in Poe's story. Dudley said it wasn't necessary because Parker was dying anyway, but it weakens his claim of acting according to the custom of the sea. Some historians even argue that the idea of drawing lots was discussed but ultimately rejected.
Right. So there are these conflicting accounts, these little bits of information that make the whole thing even more ambiguous. It's like a puzzle with some pieces missing.
Exactly. And the fact that Dudley used his penknife to kill Parker, just this ordinary, everyday object used for such a horrific act, it adds this strange layer of mundanity to this incredibly dramatic, horrifying event.
It's like the banality of evil, but on a smaller, more intimate scale.
And even though they were initially sentenced to death, Dudley and Stevens only ended up serving 6 months. That says a lot about the public's conflicted feelings about the case. People were horrified by what they did, but they also understood the impossible situation they were in.
It's like that age-old question.
Yeah.
What would you do to survive?
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the possibility that Poe himself drew inspiration from earlier shipwreck accounts when he wrote Pym, though none that we know of feature a Richard Parker meeting that specific end. It's just a reminder that these dark tales of survival cannibalism have been whispered about for centuries.
They're part of our collective maritime nightmare. And to make things even more bizarre, there have been other real-life Richard Parkers involved in maritime incidents, though none with this specific connection. So while the coincidence in the Mignonette case is incredible, it's also a reminder that the name itself wasn't all that unique.
Right. It's all about context, isn't it? And in this case, the context is so specific, so loaded with meaning, that it elevates this coincidence to something truly unforgettable.
So, dear listeners, what do you make of all this? Is it a mind-boggling coincidence? Or is there something more at play here, something that defies logic and whispers of deeper connections? This historic road trip into the tale of the Mignonette and the two Richard Parkers has left us with a lot to ponder. Questions about fate, about survival, about the strange and enduring power of stories.
It's a case that keeps coming back to haunt us, doesn't it? And for good reason. R.V. Dudley and Stevens remains a touchstone in legal and ethical debates. It forces us to grapple with uncomfortable truths about human nature and the limits of what we're willing to do when faced with our own mortality. And the unsettling echo of Poe's fiction adds this layer of literary mystique that just won't let go.
It's a story that lingers long after you've heard it. So, if you're as captivated by this tale as we are, we encourage you to explore it further. Dive into A.W. Brian Simpson's Cannibalism and the Common Law, or Neil Hansen's The Custom of the Sea for a deeper look. There are also tons of resources on the R.V. Dudley and Stevens case online. And of course, you can always read Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket yourself. Yeah, it's well worth the read, even if it does leave you with a slightly unsettling feeling.
So, what other historical mysteries and bizarre coincidences have caught your eye? Let us know. We're always on the lookout for our next historic road trip.
Yeah, we love a good rabbit hole, so keep those suggestions coming.
And remember, folks, this is just a taste of the weird and wonderful world of history. There are countless other tales waiting to be uncovered.
Oh, we've only just scratched the surface.
So thanks for joining us on the History Story podcast. Share this episode, rate us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us for more captivating and strange stories from the world of flash culture. Until next time, happy exploring. See you on the next historic road trip.